And again, my name is Ankur Patel. I'm the Director of Advancement for Hindu University of America. And today we are having a very special webinar on Ayurveda, the wisdom of well-being. Our special guest is Lubena Krishnamurthy, and we've had the privilege of working together on other aspects of Hindu University of America for a little while, and we're really happy and honored to have you teaching a course on Ayurveda for the first time at HUA starting in the spring quarter in a few weeks in April. And let me just let you know that Lube Energy is a yoga educator and holistic health practitioner with a background in medicine and teaching credentials in Ayurveda and meditation. She has over 15 years of multinational corporate experience in aviation and logistics. She is one of Bangalore's leading yoga, anatomy, philosophy, and ethics educators with expertise in spinal conditions, physiological disorders, thyroid imbalances, as well as psychosomatic influence. As founder of the Curvy Yogi, she models inclusive and accessible yoga asana, dedicated to continuous study under her teachers. Lube Energy is a student of Vedanta and is also engaged in a 5-year study of the Bhagavad Gita. She is currently the state president of WICCI, Karnataka Yoga Council, and has received the Iconic Woman Leader Award from Women Economic Forum 2020. Lube Energy, it's a pleasure and an honor to have you on with us today. Let me hand it over to you, and I'll be supporting you throughout this webinar. And welcome to all our guests. And if you put it in the chat from all around the world where you're at, thank you for joining us for this special webinar on a Saturday evening. Lube Energy.
Namaste, everyone, and thank you, Anguji, for that lovely introduction. And I must say that while we were waiting, that music was just so soothing. It actually brings in a lot of vibe to what we're speaking about as well. Welcome, everyone, and thank you for registering and to spend your time with us and with me, especially today, while we bring to you HUA's very first Ayurveda program. Now, the thing with Ayurveda is that it isn't just a science. It is just not a topic alone that seems to be trending today. And I think I would like to begin with just sharing why and how Ayurveda has been so important and influential in my own life. The thing is that, like most of us today, we seem to be disconnected with ourselves, with everything that's going on around us. And like no surprise to many of us, Ayurveda came to me in a very, very simple way. It came from my family. I come from a lineage of Ayurveda practitioners, and my great-grandmother herself was a Vaidya at a time when the entire community, or the village as we would call it now, would reach out to her for wellness and for care, for relief from pain. Moved on to my grandmother, who then slowly diversified into bringing Ayurveda and the Ayurvedic remedies, along with pharmacy. It skipped a generation of sorts, I think. My mother maintained the essence of the wisdom, but then she took on accountancy. She still is an accountant with a herbal background. And then it came to me where, again, I had to bring in all of these things when it comes to health, well-being, and I think personally for me, a love of people. But Ayurveda isn't all of these things alone. It isn't just the practice. It isn't just a way of curing people or removing them from any kind of physical pain or physiological pain. It isn't symptomatic. Ayurveda is a way of life, but more than that, it is a science of life. What brought me closer to Ayurveda and what really holds its grip on me today with Ayurveda is the fact that this science of life is usually now considered as something that is irrational, something that has no foundation, something that doesn't have a relevance in our contemporary and modern technologically driven lives. And that can't be further from the truth as Ayurveda goes. Particularly when it comes to how Ayurveda is positioned within HUA, I think it sits in a very comfortable and nurturing space because it is a wisdom tradition. It is something that has been handed down to us from our ancestors, not just easily, but through a lot of pain. We have a heritage that is provided to us, that has been received or delivered to us today, that comes from or comes through, making its way through from a lot of historical pain, a lot of generational pain, just like many of the other traditional forms of wisdom that are available today. Ayurveda is no different. It does have a mythological origin, the way we call it, but that myth that we speak about, that myth of the origin of Ayurveda, or even yoga for that matter, or any of our wisdom traditions, is not a myth to prove its irrationality. It's a myth. It's a myth that has been provided to us from the culture of those times. It's a way in which these very deep truths have been made accessible to us and to our way of thinking, to our logic, to our very, very vividly imaginative mind, to understand the essence of what Ayurveda is and how it comes to us. Today, we have many forms of teachers, many kinds of teachers who bring this wisdom to us. Some of them appeal to certain ways of thinking. Some of them still follow a very symptomatic form. In fact, in India itself, you'll find that most practitioners, or most patients, if we have to call them, reach out to a physician, reach out to Vaidyas, reach out to Ayurvedic physicians and doctors for immediate relief of physical pain or physiological disorders, cancers even. Now, Ayurveda is not the very allopathic system of immediate cure. It is not that immediate and symptomatic relief system. However, it has evolved its way, the way we are into present times, to meet those needs as well. Yet, if you can just quickly put in the chat box, what do you understand by Ayurveda? When you think of Ayurveda, what are the first things that come to your mind? You know? And I won't give you any clues. I'll just let you just share in the chat. What do you think of when you hear the term Ayurveda? Preventive medicine, Anju says Vata, Pitta, and Kapha, lifestyle to prevent, natural, nature, holistic, way of life, ancient. All of this is true. All of this is true so far. And you're right. It's because in our way of life, we actually integrate everything that's going on in our bodies. I see there, I usually see oils and Chyawanprash from Kuan. Yes, so that's also a part of it. And you see, it, depending on patient type and all of that, yes. So you see, it's very heartening to know that you all have a very integrative approach to already understanding what Ayurveda is. Ayurveda, the science of life, is not just a system of healing. It's a consciousness-based system of healing. It's consciousness that unites us all, and but at the same time, it's very customized. It's very personal. It's very individualistic, and at the same time, very holistic. There is no one-size-fits-all in Ayurveda. An Ayurvedic system of healing or even approach to health and wellness considers the individual not just as a limited being, something that's fitted in this form, and something that says, okay, you've got some pain here, you've got some ache here, you've got a headache, or you've got an upset stomach. That's not what Ayurveda is. Ayurveda considers that all of us are not just individual forms, but we're also connected to the larger whole. And this understanding of the unification of all of us in our individuality alongside our connection to all that is, makes it a very unifying way of life. It takes us away from being self-centered, but more about being more conscious with each other. And in this process, Ayurveda then becomes not just a system of wellness, but it takes in a system of integrating us in a mind, body, and spirit. That's also one of the trinities that we have, where we have the integration of our mind, body, spirit with our environment, which includes the mind, body, spirit of others around us. And we don't just speak about others as in human being others. We talk about beings, we talk about animals and plants and the birds, the entire environment. It builds that sense of compatibility and that sense of integration for all of us in this universe. But at the same time, when we speak about consciousness, we're speaking about consciousness not just about our awareness to our immediate surroundings, but consciousness as that larger sense of, or that larger presence, that larger entity, which is not an entity. And that's where philosophy comes in. That truth, that love of wisdom, that love of truth. Philosophy of Ayurveda that is very closely linked to the darshana of Sankhya, the Sankhyan philosophy, which allows us to understand how creation actually happened. Now, when we talk about philosophy and we talk about Sankhya, we talk about the darshanas. One of the misinformation, one of the misunderstandings that we have today is that Indic or Hindu philosophy is religious in a way. And we immediately draw connections to any of our wisdom traditions that are born out of our Indic culture as a religious understanding of things. But there is a very, very close connection between religion and consciousness. But at the same time, they're very different. Okay, I see a mention here about the volume being low. Can a quick voice check? Am I audible to everyone?
Yeah, Lube Energy, I can hear you pretty well.
Okay, thank you, Ankurji.
Thank you.
Right. So, yes, so consciousness. Now, it stems from the very understanding that we arrive from a place. And most of our scriptures spend the initial time speaking to us about consciousness. We have this understanding given to us as a foundation about where we come from, how we are created. And we're not talking about our individual creation, we're talking about the creation of the universe. So in the macrocosmic scheme of things, as well as the microcosmic scheme of things, there is a very close analogy drawn, saying that if the universe was created in this particular way, from that eternal consciousness of Purusha and Prakriti, flowing all the way down to the very tangible forms of who we are, then we, being a part of that universe, are also created likewise. And in that understanding of philosophical creation, we are able to fine-tune and very finely understand how we are created, what we are made up of, what our body is made up of, what our mind is made up of, and recognize that all of our creation vibrates or behaves in accordance with the laws of that particular creative evolute. For example, how many of you have heard of the 5 elements or the 5 great elements, the Pancha Mahabhutas? And you can put that in your chat. Yes. Yes. You've heard of it. Okay. Do you know that you are also a part of creation, which means that you are also made up of the Pancha Mahabhutas? So the Pancha Mahabhutas, there we go. So there is an order as well, right? In how we actually, first there was nothing. So there is the space, there is the air, then it starts crystalling down where the friction happens. And we will speak more about this in the course as well, because it's an absolutely beautiful way of how Ayurveda or any of the scriptures describe how the Pancha Mahabhutas were actually evolved out of this sense of consciousness. So air then creates your fire, it settles down to water, and finally crystallizes and solidifies into the most gross element, and that is earth or Prithvi. And our bodies are made up of all of these elements. And if our bodies are made up of all of these elements, so is our mind, or so are our minds. These elements have particular qualities. For example, if we take the quality of jala, okay, or up, we talk about water. Water has a particular texture, a feel, a way of being, a nature. It has its own inherent qualities. Now, these qualities are there in our body, in our physical body. We can see it in our tears, in our saliva, the juices in our body, the water content in our body. All of that has got the water element. These are the tangibles. But our intangibles, that is the parts of us that we know exist, but we can't see, we can't feel physically with our senses, but we know it exists. For example, our mind. Our mind also can sometimes behave like the different forms of water, right? It can be fluid, it can be pure, it can be still, it can be disturbed under the influences of so many others, but of so many of the other elements. But this understanding of how our nature, our personality, our physical being, not just our, the way we are structured, but also the way our body functions on the inside, all of these are defined by these different qualities of the Pancha Mahabhutas. And Ayurveda understands that recognizing any kind of imbalance in the nature of the Pancha Mahabhutas can help us then recalibrate or bring back into balance any of these imbalances just by understanding the different forms of the Mahabhutas and see what is actually out of balance. So, in other words, Ayurveda cures to some extent, but only after understanding where the imbalance lies. So it is a very close understanding. It's a very close work with the individual by understanding what is their nature, what's actually going on here, and how do we bring this imbalance closer to a sense of balance or homeostasis. When we think of it as the body, it's one way of thinking. But now imagine if we have to think in terms of our minds, if we have to think in terms of how our minds, our thoughts go out of balance, not just in a psychosomatic, not just a mind-body related way, but also in a way of interaction between each other. How many of you, and I'm really curious about this, have thought of Ayurveda, or even what we've just spoken so far, in terms of building interpersonal relationships? And I'm really curious to see answers to this. Anju says no, Archana says yes. Okay, never, Bhavin says. Yeah. So now let me think, let's put it this way. When we think of each of us, this is beyond relationship to the environment. Yes, Ashish. So all of us are made up of our Pancha Mahabhutas, okay? And all of us, so one of the ways in which I like to explain this is that if the Pancha Mahabhutas are 5 ingredients of a cookie recipe, each of us have a little pinch of it, right? And our ingredients the recipe is tweaked for our own personal use. So each of us are cookies, similar cookies, but with a little bit more and a little bit less of one or the other ingredients. Now, if all of us are a little bit more and a little bit less, the way our cookie is experienced or is tasting is very different from somebody else. When we understand that difference between ourselves and someone else, then we recognize that, I must be having a little bit extra salt in me, and the next person may have a little bit of extra sugar. Someone else may have a little bit of extra chocolate in it, if it's a chocolate chip cookie, okay? So we recognize that each of us are made very differently, and that the quality of who we are differs based on what is more or less in us. And that is our blueprint. That is our original recipe. And I love describing ourselves as our original cookie recipe, or you can make it your idli or your dosa recipe or whatever it is, that your recipe is unique to you. Now, when you recognize your uniqueness, then we stop and pause and reflect on the next person's reaction or response to the similar situation. When, there are times when we say, how can people even think this way? I mean, how can he be responding to it in this way? I mean, isn't it obvious that we have to give this kind of response? And that disbelief that someone else may think very differently from us is usually then used as a barrier between two people, right? A barrier between two people on any topic, any conversation that we have. Recognizing that the other person responds or reacts, and they're two different things, responds or reacts to different situation based on how they are made up, right? Based on their nature, based on their individual ingredient in the recipe, which is dominant, will make us feel compassionate and understanding, saying, okay, they are not like me, I am not like them. I may not fully understand what they're saying and why they are behaving that way, but at least I have the assurance that they are behaving true to their nature. Now, immediately, what this brings about is a sense of understanding, a sense of cooperation, a sense of compassion that allows for a better relationship. It brings about active listening. It brings about, not immediately, okay? None of these are immediate cures. None of these are immediate changes, but the shift is immediate, the shift of awareness. And that's, again, that sense of consciousness. Ayurveda elevates us to be conscious of the larger picture, not just for ourselves, but for each other. And in this form of building interpersonal skills, we can actually now start building community. It begins with two individuals forming a relationship, forming that union of thought, that need for a peaceful conversation, that need for not just compromise, but compassionate listening and conversation, communication, building teams together, improving relationships at home with our spouse, our partner, with our children, with our environment, our neighbors. We usually have disagreements with people we live in close proximity to. Ayurveda, as a way of life, as a science of life, teaches us that, or gives us those tools that help us form those bonds with each other. It helps us not just elevate ourselves, but in the process, elevate the entire community. So I just find it absolutely beautiful, the way we are able, or the way it is possible for us to calibrate and synchronize, synergize our way of being, just by understanding simple Ayurveda, very, very simply, because it appeals to our logic. It is not purely, it is not a fictional form of traditional quackery, as it is called today. It is not quackery. It is a deeper understanding of human potential, of human thought, of characteristics, blending our personality, blending who we are by explaining our psychology and our psyche to merge it with our understanding of our bodies, of our physiology, of those kinds of disorders or those kinds of symptoms that we have that are normal for us, okay? And I say normal, not because it is normal to be ill, but because we know of some of the things that are, or some conditions, disorders, or some tendencies to fall ill, or some illnesses that are more, that we individually are more susceptible to. For example, some people are prone to getting colds. Some others are prone to getting heat rashes. Constipation is another chronic disorder, which not everyone is constipated, but some people are more prone to constipation, not just an acute sudden bout, but it's a chronic form of it. Without giving so much detail into, this, have you felt, or do you have, or have you been aware of certain things that for you have been the way you are the most life? It could be, I am an angry person. I have a very short temper. I get rashes very frequently. I've had premature graying. This is a sign of, this is a symptom, this is an indication, this silver streak is an indication of who I am. So through the course that we are looking forward to have at HUA, it excites me very much to be able to share these little tips that we can speak to each other of, that we can just look at someone else and say, make an initial assessment, not a judgment. Okay, and we usually think that, this might be a very judgmental way of approaching, that you just look at someone and you say, this is how they must be. It is not judgmental. It gives you an opportunity to assess the person in front of you and make a compassionate response towards them, okay? Which, when someone spoke about doshas, that's another theory that Ayurveda plays into, in the combination of these Pancha Mahabhutas, to understand them as energetic pillars. And we have them as the different doshas. We have it as Vata, Pitta, and Kapha. the blend of two of the Mahabhutas. So if we've got Vata, it's Akash and Vayu, the air and space element. If we've got Pitta, it is your Tejas and your Agni and your Jala. Okay, together they form your Pitta. And then Kapha is your Prithvi and your Jala, your earth and your water. Now, why we have these is one, it's a simplification. Okay, it helps you look at the main elements which then create any kind of imbalance in your body. So it's easier to look at three. But I've noticed that in present times, most people just think of Ayurveda and they think of the three doshas. Ayurveda, Vata, Pitta, Kapha. And then we start identifying as I'm a Vata, I'm a Pitta, or I'm a Kapha. The scriptures, the Ayurvedic scriptures, actually speak very little of the doshas and more in terms of the Pancha Mahabhutas. The balance in the scriptures usually refers to balancing the Pancha Mahabhutas, be it in terms of your food, be it in terms of the different medicine or the way in which we can recalibrate the body. But the doshas are a very unique way, which, and because they've been simplified so much, that give you a quick reference, a quick guide. And these doshas are also a combination of your recipes, right? Of your ingredients, of your unique cookie mixture. Doshas in particular help us not just easily identify someone else, but also recognize that we are not missing the other two doshas. We have the other two doshas as well. So we might be predominantly of one particular dosha, but most of us are bi-doshic. Okay, and very, very rarely do you find individuals with three doshic temperaments, three doshic constitutions. And I'll just, Sirisha, I'll come back to you on that just now on KPHA or KFHA. Ayurveda refers to constitution very, very frequently. The entire premise of Ayurveda, when it comes to individual well-being or even bringing the body back into balance, is to understand our constitution, of how we are constituted by recognizing the constituents, the individual components of our being. Now, for that kapha, and I know it's standing out there for me. So there are two things that come out. Of course, our chat is in English. Kapha or kapha or kapha. Ayurveda, or the texts that we study today, are from Sanskritam. And the letter that we use to write the word is pa. Sanskritam has pa. It is not fa. So when we talk about it, it's written as kapha. But the colloquial way of speaking, of bringing Ayurveda into our homes, usually gets us to say kapha. Okay, but it is not F. So if we have to write it in English, we would write it as KAPHA, because the word in its the spelling or the consonant itself in Sanskritam is kapha. So that is how it is. So, but we wouldn't write it in English as KAFHA. We would write it as KAPHA and pronounce it as kapha. Yes. So when we talk about the constitution, Ayurveda, like I asked in the very first time, what are the first things that come to mind when we think of Ayurveda, right? If you had to ask me, before I actually actively took on Ayurveda as a study, the first thing that came to mind for me when I heard of Ayurveda, or when I would think of Ayurveda, were bitter herbs, bitter medicines, and lot of stinking oils. Anyone taking my explanation? Okay. I don't know Tamil, Padmaji. So, yes, so possibly. But most of us think of Ayurveda and we think of all the different Ayurvedic spas and massages, the Abhyangams, and we say that they have these series of massages and they are very, very oil-based. Some of us may even think of those beautiful wooden carved tables, which you need people to assist you to get onto them. You need them to get out of them. The entire sensory experience of an Ayurvedic massage is profound. But bottom line, when I thought of Ayurveda the very first time, I thought of oils. Okay, I thought of oils and bitter medicines and all of these things because we had them at home. Yes, we also think of pulse reading. Now, you see, just in the diversity of answers, Ayurveda is not just one path. Ayurveda is not just one system. Ayurveda is a multidimensional system, a multi-pronged approach, because we are so diverse. We are so multidimensional. We've got the method of keeping our body in balance, which means that a body that needs fuel talks about food, right? So Ayurveda explains ways in which you eat for your constitution. You eat what is right for you so that you do not fall sick, so that you maintain your body in the state of health. But if you do fall sick, Ayurveda also has a therapeutic approach that is consciousness-based. So while medicines have a range and we say, okay, these are the different medicines, Ayurveda also tells us that this medicine in this potency, in this particular potency, is what is prescribed to individual A, versus individual B will have a slightly different potency or a different variant of it. And individual C might have a completely different medicine, purely depending on what is presenting and what that individual needs to bring their bodies back into balance. That's where our consultations vary. Anyone who's had a very first and initial assessment of the Vedya with an Ayurvedic practitioner or even a physician will realize that you can't schedule 15 minutes and make an appointment after half an hour. You need a good 1.5 hours, sometimes even 2 hours, because you'll be asked of so many questions that after your allopathic approach, you'd be like, what kind of questions are these? Right? Because they'll ask you to show you their tongue, they'll look at your teeth, your lips, your fingers, they'll take your pulse in a very different way. You'll also see that sometimes they'll ask you about your elimination, right? And a very straight-faced Vaidya might probably ask you, how do you poop? Tell me about your poop. Tell me about your stools. And no expression, very deadpan, because your stools are a part of you. Your stools tell a story to the physician of who you are, how you are, and what your internal environment is. Your wastes or the malas of the body are equally important to a Vaidya to bring your body into balance than how you are when you're at your happiest best. We may want to bring you back to your happiest best, but it's very important to look at your feces, your stools, your urine, your sweat, any of these, even your menstrual cycles for women, how often, how frequent, how heavy, how light, right? All of these are important indicators to a Vaidya to tell them what's going on with you. It's not just a symptomatic relief. It is trying to find the root cause, which usually requires just active listening. And that's why in this particular program, right, we look at helping you rebuild that connection to yourself. Of course, we're looking at rebuilding our connection to our heritage, to our culture, something that is available to each of us. Because when we have our individual health in our control, we're not talking about, this is not competition. Allopathy has its place, and every good Vaidya will tell you that when there is an acute concern, then allopathy plays its role, right? Ayurveda is not in denial of other forms of health and well-being. Ayurveda is not in denial or in competition or taking up any other form of wellness's place. Ayurveda is. It is a form of our wellness and our well-being, but it is also a very strong connector to what our tradition and our culture asks of us or provides us in terms of empowerment. When we are empowered to make choices for our well-being, to keep us in balance, to keep us in harmony with each other, we not just build ourselves, we build our society. We build a country that is strong, resilient, compassionate to each other, building each other up, strengthening each other. And that is an immense form of empowerment, which with our historical trauma was taken away. It was taken away, and that is our painful truth. Empowering ourselves through Ayurveda is one of the keys. And I think it is one of my deepest drawn desires to help people recognize that through Ayurveda, they can take charge of themselves. They can help complement any ongoing treatment for their disorders or for their loved ones, for their families, their children even, by incorporating Ayurveda to bring about a deeper sense of connection, a groundedness, integration. And all of this is rooted through our Sankhyan tradition, our Sankhyan philosophy. It is rooted and complementary to yogic practices, to practices of cleansing, to approaching health and well-being, not just as a symptomatic, oh, I have indigestion and what do I do? But more in terms of there is an imbalance. What is going on? How do I understand myself better? And how do I take charge of this? How do I evolve through this? And the next very, very unique at this point of Ayurveda for me to bring to you is the fact that when I speak about evolution, and I spoke a little bit about the consciousness-based origins of Ayurveda, Ayurveda is a system that allows us the opportunity to be well and healthy in body and mind, because this body-mind complex is our vehicle for all spiritual exploration. Our spiritual journey is dependent on this mind and body. Ayurveda helps us maintain this mind-body vehicle in order to develop and evolve spiritually. Ayurveda does not just say, okay, 5 days, you've got a fever, you've gotten over, symptoms are done, back to work. It doesn't just tell you that. Ayurveda says, you're a spiritual being, you're here on a spiritual journey, you've had a hiccup health-wise, let's fix that, let's bring you back closer to your path and help you evolve spiritually by keeping your mind and body in harmony. By harmonizing your mind and body and making it available to you to explore and experience your spiritual path. And that's why most of us have heard of this term that Ayurveda is a sister science of yoga or the yogic path. Well, not necessarily sister science, but a distant relative or a close relative, a cousin perhaps, but they go hand in hand. They help you on the path to yoga. They help you experience and or move on the path of union. It helps you unify your mind and your body along with everything around you to recognize and go beyond what makes us uniquely individual in matter, but also understand how we resonate on a spiritual level for ourselves, between ourselves, within ourselves, and with each other as well. So what is Ayurveda then after all? There is no one way to define it. Ayurveda is a science of life, the life that we are privileged to experience as humans. Ayurveda also is a science of life. So there is an experiential quality of how Ayurveda helps us overcome limitations, physical, physiological disorders, imbalances. Ayurveda is a psychology. Ayurveda helps us recognize what's going on in our minds. Ayurveda is therapeutic counseling as well. It helps us build relationships. In the process, Ayurveda can also be used to build teams in offices. Well, you can't have a profile saying, okay, before you're hired, well, I need to have you visit our Ayurvedic physician. It doesn't work that way, right? I don't know who's going to apply if you do that, maybe just a handful of us. But knowledge of Ayurveda helps us recognize very quickly qualities that are inherent in different individuals, which then helps us form a team where everyone brings in their strength to the team. And okay, so I'll pause now just for a moment to acknowledge that I have spoken about Ayurveda many, 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 many times. But every time I speak about it, when I come to this point in various conversations about how diversely applicable Ayurveda is to everything that we do, I am just blown out of my mind. I find it so powerful that with this very first step of knowledge, we are able to create that much of a shift in who we are and how we experience life. So think of it. We can even use Ayurveda, the understanding of Ayurveda, and the application of it, not just as an individual wellness thing, but also to different places, right? The Ayurveda of different places, to see which move, or which, say, maybe a career transition or an immigration of sorts, or an emigration, will be the closest synergy or congruence to who we are. Which place would be most ideal for us to thrive, to achieve success, to achieve that sense of peace and balance? We've heard this many times, where we make moves, or we make career choices, we move to a different city where everything is all planned out, and the opportunity is brilliant. But once you go there, something just doesn't seem right. We either can't, it's either the vibe of the city, or we sometimes blame it on the food. We say, the food is just not agreeing, and everything comes down to food eventually. But Ayurveda has a way to explain this as well. If we know the constitution of the place, of the city, of the vibe, the vibration, the energy of a particular city, we may choose to go there or not. We may choose to step into that place with adequate tools to help us navigate that very diverse shift, right, of place. So it is. Ayurveda for me is a science, Padmaji says, that will help fix a person as a whole by using herbs and kitchen remedies. Brilliant point. Brilliant point. But at the same time, okay, well, let me just first of all acknowledge why that is so brilliant, okay? Ayurveda relies a lot on our environment. It relies on the herbs around us. It relies on the potency of the herbs, of the constitution of the herbs, because for every individual and every individual imbalance that we have, there is a herb or a group of herbs or remedy that can help us. Kitchen remedies, the next very, very potent term that you used. Kitchen remedies, because culturally within the heritage that we have, Ayurveda has not been distant from how our kitchens worked, okay? And the ingredients that we used in our kitchens. So health and well-being was accessible to everyone right in their homes. Our mothers, our grandmothers, our great-grandmothers knew of this. And that's why that the very first sign of a sniffle or a cold, kashayams are very common, kadhas are very common. We know exactly what to do. We know what to put in. Many of us also, however, were alienated from these kitchen remedies because of the way it looked, because of how unpolished and uncivilized our remedies looked. We are all very familiar with the turmeric paste being used as an antiseptic for everything. We are also very familiar of walking out and having people, and this is not so common in India, because people are they are comfortable with seeing someone with turmeric either as a tilak or maybe even as a paste or a face mask. But outside of India, in the Western world, there have been many instances where people have been shamed and traumatized or even humiliated for their use of our traditional recipes, our traditional approaches to wellness. So yes, those both are very, very potent ways in which these herbs and these kitchen remedies have been conveyed from one generation to the next. But at the same time, what we need to understand is that Ayurveda doesn't help only to fix things, okay? It helps to bring things back into balance. What I wanted to indicate here, and I don't know if you saw it on one of our social media quick, there were these little videos that were created. Ayurveda doesn't only use herbs, okay? Ayurveda does not only use herbs. Ayurveda uses all of our environmental abundance. Ayurveda uses minerals. It uses the bark of the tree. It uses the flowers. Every part of a plant can be used. It uses certain elements from the earth's crust also, or even from the center, that are a little that are not typical in what we consider as Ayurvedic remedies, right? We also use animal products. We also use products from animal or animal ingredients. So it is a myth to some extent, or to a large extent, that Ayurveda promotes vegetarianism. Ayurveda uses everything in that's present to us on, that's a gift of Mother Earth to help bring our bodies to a state of balance. It is not uncommon for people, for example, those who are severely anemic or even pregnant women who may have been given a quick dose or a short bout of a non-vegetarian diet to bring their body back into a sense of balance when it comes to their blood levels, and then they come back. So everything has its place and it doesn't denounce anything. You'd be surprised at the amount of or the extensive non-vegetarian diet prescriptions that the Samhitas have, that are there in the Ayurvedic scriptures, which really make us pause and think, what are we fighting about when we speak to people about, about the disturbances or the discrepancies that are there between vegetarianism and non-vegetarianism, and how that causes a rift. Of course, we speak about spiritual progress also in a different topic, but it's available. It's not denouncing it. Now, what do I say about all of this, and why do we have any of these conversations? I think this is just a precursor, a prelude, an opportunity for me to express how passionate I am about Ayurveda. And also because in this course, when we study about the wisdom of Ayurveda, it is because Ayurveda really does have that wisdom. In our 11-week program, we'll be looking at various concepts. We'll be looking at the philosophy. We'll be looking at the different doshas, at the history of Ayurveda, how it came into being, and why we really need to have a sense of pride and attachment to really uplift Ayurveda. We'll be looking at food, a very important component. Food that we see not just for our immediate well-being, but also for as a family, as how we consider the entire unit when it comes to food, for our individual well-being, our growth, our spiritual progress. We have the thank you, Ankurji. Ankurji has put out the link there for us for you to register for the program. We will be speaking also in terms of the psychology of Ayurveda, of how we actually build teams. More importantly, it will give you the tools of bringing your body back into balance. We will be speaking about different forms and protocols of how we, as a part of the environment, as a part of the universe, also go through cyclical changes. And this is not just cyclical in terms of the feminine cycles, but also as cycles as a race, as the human race in itself, how we change. So understanding dinacharya, or the different systems of how we can bring our body, protocols of how we can be in balance, protocols for seasonal changes, cleanses, all of these things and so much more. The course is designed to be interactive. I have one, foundational rule. If you have to sign in, you have to smile and you have to interact. Okay, because when you smile, it brings a little bit more joy in you what you're learning. So we don't study about Ayurveda this way. Okay, so it's not a very strict thing. So you need to interact. You need to feel joyous about all of that. And I am very excited about this course. I am, because I absolutely love Ayurveda. It gives me an opportunity to bring back the wisdom from my lineage, from my grandmother, my great-grandmother, and maybe even people before them, and my teachers through to you, and help share that with all of you. And I'm really, really looking forward to this. So please go ahead and sign up, and I'll look forward to see you on the 16th of April. Ankurji, over to you. And if there are any questions that I may have missed.
Yeah, we have a lot of questions, lots of interesting conversations. And, this was kind of my first conversation in following the chat and how you opened up the whole concept of Ayurveda to be so much more than what our initial inclinations are. I'm looking forward to this course over 11 weeks, what you're going to explore and how you're going to expand it. And one other thing that I'd like to announce is a $100 discount. If you can sign up before March 31st, we will give you a $100 discount to enroll in our first ever Ayurveda course at HUA. I'm going to launch a quick poll right now. So just, click right here. Let us know if you're interested in taking the course, yes or no. Just if you're not sure, just click yes. If you're not, but just click no. Just let us know. There's 152 people still in the webinar. We'll be following up. You'll get the replay of this also if you registered. This is exciting. I'm just happy to be a part of this. And as HUA grows, we are connecting all these different aspects of Hindu thought that have been there, but we need people like Lube Energy to have courses and share this in a joyful, energetic, inclusive way. And that's what we're about at Hindu University of America. So if you have questions, you could put them in the chat. Don't put them in the chat, actually. Put them in the Q&A box. So that way we can keep track of them. We can dismiss them. The course, if you sign up by March 31st, will be $200. $300 is the normal price per unit that HUA has set our instruction at. And you are also typing and responding to CBS Patelji, something like double-blind trials that prove Ayurvedic way of wellness one way or the other. Do you want to type it or do you want to just respond?
I'll respond to it because I think that is something that most people would be interested in. There are a lot of trial studies, research papers that have already been issued, and there are many centers in India that are undertaking those research questions. Through the course and as well, I'd be sharing those with the participants so that they can actually look at that and see that there is a way in which you can prove many of the processes and protocols of Ayurveda for wellness, Chaudharyji.
Nice. Right. It's not an immediate cure. We're not going to solve everything, but this is the pathway to getting to that better balanced state of life. You're also looking at the Q&A, Lube Energy? So,
yes, I am. So can I just take them then so we save time? Okay. So Nakshiji is asking if, can we say that if we follow Ayurveda along with yoga, then we get a tad bit faster to our destination, union, than doing just yoga alone. So yoga is the path. And that's one way. And that is what many of us, those are the practices and the protocols that we do in our physical practice and our approach to life. Ayurveda is a system of well-being. It's very complementary to it. Now, speed is not something that we calculate on the path or path to spiritual evolution, but it complements you. So even when we practice yoga, sometimes we may do too much of it or too little, or we may recognize certain imbalances, and Ayurveda can help you. When you understand yourself, your personality, your constitution, it can help you complement your path of yoga. So it is a good support system for you. Okay. Should we eat based on our dosha or seasonal availability? In Western countries, we do not get the fresh herbs or spices that are superfoods for particular doshas. Kirtiji, join the course, and we will be speaking very extensively on this. But ideally, we should be eating based on our dosha in compatibility or in congruence with the seasonal availability. Now, Ayurveda does not say that, hey, go travel all over the world and eat Indian herbs or eat Indian vegetables and foods only. Ayurveda helps you understand the nature of those different foods that are available to you, regardless of where you are. And you can make choices on what's available to you. In Western countries, there is, once you understand the potency of, say, maybe dry herbs versus fresh herbs and spices, then you'd be able to make those changes as well. And you will be empowered to do so. So you don't need to really, keep checking. But that's a brilliant question and very applicable. So thank you, Kirtiji, for that. Will the course require any memorization? You need to memorize my name. You need to memorize your name. And it's an open book approach for life. So you don't need to memorize anything. No, it won't require memorization. We won't be doing any shlokas, sutras. We won't be reaching out to the scriptures in the way of memorization. So thank you. Is the Pancha Mahabhuta a conceptual framework to understand the composition and structure of the human body, or was it some divine revelation to the Rishis that can somehow be proved by a more rigorous scientific approach? So there are a number of, this is a very intersectional question. The Pancha Mahabhuta is a theory. It's a theory because it crystallizes to first an intangible form of the Pancha Mahabhutas, and then further crystallizes to the tangible form that we can see around us. So yes, it begins with theory and then it applies, or it's the experience and the exploration of those theories within our bodies. Was it some divine revelation to the Rishis? Very likely so as well, because Ayurveda is an Upaveda. It is a timeless wisdom and that is the Shraddha that we bring in to Ayurveda as well, right? It is not just a form of, a logical, rational framework of things. It is actually a way of how it was cognized, but at the same time, with deep understanding of the human body, and then later deep exploration physically of the human bodies as well. So when we talk about the sage Sushruta, we talk about surgery in many different ways in which the body was explored, not just on a spiritual level or on a theoretical level, but in a physically surgical exploration as well. So can this be proved? If we're talking about if the revelation to the Rishis can be proven scientifically, I don't think that's an approach that even the scientists want to take, because they wouldn't want to go back and say. But there have been many psychiatric influences or psychiatric explorations to understand what exactly goes on in deep states of meditation. And we need to understand that how we in 2021 meditate versus how the Rishis meditated are two completely different energetic experiences. So I don't think it would be appropriate for me to get into the Rishi's frame of mind at this point of the webinar, but this is scope for a lot of conversation and maybe to find some kind of congruence. But in many other ways, the scientific experience, the scientific observation is very, very different from the energetic observation. That's almost like saying, hey, salt, can you explain to me what sugar is? So they're two completely different ways of looking at things. It's asking a tangible experience to explain an intangible one. So that's something, Arunji, that is a little exclusive, mutually exclusive, but at the same time, there are minor intersections to it. Has Ayurveda been developed, defined? Yes, I answered before reading the question completely. Has Ayurveda been developed, defined for non-humans or veterinary experiences too? Yes, Ayurveda has many different branches. There are whole bodies of texts that have spoken about Ayurveda for animals, Ayurveda for plants. So we have people or Vedyas who are specialized in working with animals, specialized in working with animal physiology, subspecialized, super specialized into specific animals, horses, cows, the Indian cow, or even plants, the different herbs, how you approach it, how you care for it. So yes, it is there. And that was a wonderful question from Ramki Krishnanji. Right. Does the course cover any treatment strides? More theory. So this is also from Krishnanji. The course is not only going to be a theory of Ayurveda. We will be looking at finding ways in which to bring our own selves into a state of balance. We will not be looking at treatment. We will not be looking at treatments per se, but we will be speaking about treatments as a theory, so that you know what it is, you know what is involved, and you know how to make an educated choice when you approach an Ayurvedic physician or a treatment center in how we go about it. So we will explore it, but we will not get into it in depth. Has there been a loss of knowledge of Ayurvedic herbs? Yes, Padmaji, as well as other Ayurvedic ingredients, definitely. There has been a loss of Ayurvedic herbs and ingredients after the initial study that was made, and we'll speak about this a little in our history. There had been historically extensive study made on Ayurvedic herbs and ingredients because it was so brilliant, not just the concept, but how it actually worked for others. But then eventually, when we realized that a country can be so powerful in its knowledge, in its resource of those herbs, there was also a very systematic way in which both the herbs, the ingredients, the study, and the knowledge of it was destroyed, so that we had no access to it. In fact, just me having the privilege to speak with you today, even if, and this is something I say every time to all my students, yoga or Ayurveda, if I have the privilege to earn even 1 rupee from yoga or Ayurveda, it comes at the expense of lives that have been lost to preserve what we have access to today. And it gives me immense privilege and gratitude to be able to speak about this with all of you today. So how can we recover it? We recover it by speaking about it, by promoting it, by uplifting Ayurveda as a wisdom tradition of our heritage, by helping support communities who nurture and build these herbs, the herb gardens, and even HUA, for example, by bringing this wisdom and this education to the community. Thank you for that question, Padmaji.
If I can just add, there are no prerequisites. It says admission into a program of study. That just means we're going to categorize you into terms of what interests you have. So we would also appreciate you to take orientation to Hindu studies. It's kind of our flagship onboarding course where we go over the whole mission of HUA and the different aspects, but there are no prerequisites particularly for this course. We have a whole learning management system. You get your @hua.edu email address. Lube Energy will upload information week by week that you'll have access to, readings or links or videos or whatever, however she decides to organize it. And if you miss a class, you will have access to recordings if you need it. But again, the live interaction is just part of why this is so cool and so enjoyable and so inspirational. And we want you to be a part of it in the live class. So those are just some of those technical questions. I'm going to close up this poll right now. 89 out of 127 people answered. We have almost 52 people who are interested. If you can find that poll, please just click yes or no. Let us know which way you're leaning. And Lube Energy, keep on answering questions. We still have as much time as you want to give.
Yeah, I mean, these are such brilliant questions. It just, I just have a smile on my face just reading them. Okay. Basic requirements before starting your journey in yoga is just being able to be open to it. Okay. To journey in Ayurveda, if you're going to study it, then you just need someone to guide you through the basics of it. Of course, in India, most of us think that, if you have to study Ayurveda, you have to take a 5.5-year program. That is if you want to be a physician. But the wisdom of Ayurveda is available to all of us. I mean, this course in itself is going to be a stepping stone. It's going to allow you to explore all of that and begin your journey in it, in Ayurveda as it is. Diet, exercise, thoughts, all of that evolves, Govindji. All of that evolves as part of your understanding. The deeper you know yourself, the deeper your journey in Ayurveda actually moves on, Okay. We have an anonymous question. I'm an Advaiti, not very familiar with Sankhya. Can I still adopt? Yes, very definitely, surely so. There are so many people who adopt and who follow an Ayurvedic way of living and an Ayurvedic way of thinking, and they're not really familiar with the philosophy of Sankhya. When you take on the student path, when you actually engage with the teacher to study, then part of Ayurvedic learning is a background or a quick primer in Sankhyan philosophy. So yes, even if you're not familiar, you can still adopt it. But if you really take in the time, then you will have a good foundation from understanding Sankhya. Time commitment for the course, apart from the course time that we will have, like Ankurji just said, at different points in the program, we will have reading, we will have certain assignments that are very introspective in a way. So it's not a dedicated time. You may take the entire time between two sessions, or you may just spend about an hour just going through what you're reading and the assignments that are provided. Okay, a recipe for Kada or COVID. So for COVID, okay, this is from Omji. I'd like to share that I am initiated in the Dashanami tradition of Karma Sannyas, and my initiated name is Om. So, Namaste Omji, and let me just tell you something. I will post a recipe for Kada, okay, and maybe some other supportive recipes on the HUA social media link. Okay. So Ankurji, if you can just put in there our Instagram and our Facebook IDs, then for those of you who are on this webinar, when you head over there over the next few days, you will see something that can be very supportive during this time. And it's not only for someone who has been diagnosed with COVID, but something that can actually help you support your immunity during this time. Okay. Thank you, Omji, for that. In allopathic medicine, we go to our primary care provider for an annual checkup, sends us to do blood work, lab report, anything like that in Ayurveda. Yes, Ayurveda today has evolved to understand and integrate what blood works and any kind of diagnostic or diagnostics that are available to us in contemporary and mainstream medicine. So blood work is important. Blood work is also considered. But at the same time, there are many other ways of examining an individual. And we'll be considering that, Bhavinji, in the course. We will be speaking about the different ways in which we observe observations, diagnostics, and some of the things you'll be able to do yourself. And that is going to be absolutely, absolutely cool. Recordings, yes, will be made available, Krishnaji, as all of the courses at HUA have recordings that are made available to the participants. Will we need any particular textbooks? I will be providing a link. We've got, so two of my teachers, we've also got Pandit Vamdev Shastri or Dr. David Frawley, his book, as well as Dr. Vasant Lad's. And the course material or the syllabus will include the list of these two books, and you can take either or both. Both of them are wonderful additions to your bookshelf, but not just to sit there, to actually give you that information that you need to start the journey. Absolutely, Omji, you can take advantage of Ayurveda living in the US or anywhere in the world, because it teaches you to be in harmony with your surroundings. So no matter where you are, Ayurveda can help uplift you spiritually as well as physically, mentally, and physiologically. Any exams? Well, there is observation. Okay, I'll put it that way. It's not necessarily an exam, but then there are some milestone interactions that you will need to do to complete the course successfully. How much reading do we have to do? Not much, but what is there is going to be sufficient for you to take this. So you don't have to spend hours reading. So this is not a reading course. 9 p.m. EST is kind of late. I live in India, and 9 p.m. EST is 6:30 a.m. for me here. If we make it any earlier, then I will throw my Ayurvedic constitution out of balance. And so 9 p.m. EST is the time. But you may attend some. Recordings are also available. And yeah, so that is the timing. Will we have any practical approach? Yes, and implement that in our day-to-day life that you can implement and to improve. Yes, right from day one, there will be practical approaches. So you will be able to you will be able to implement those immediately, share, experience what the outcome is, and you'll be able to see that yourself. Okay. How can we get course content? Like Ankurji said, it's going to be on the website very soon. Course, help us. Okay, hang on a minute. Using it, how this course will help us other than using it on ourselves. Like I said in the webinar, it helps you not only bring about a sense of balance, but also understanding each other interpersonally. It can help you help your family, your children, your friends. It can help you give any ideas. Okay, do we need to reference books? I have taken this. How much of the history and the Ayurvedic texts will we study? Okay, Shilpaji, we will not be studying the Ayurvedic texts, the actual samhitas, but we will have references from them. This is a continuing education program, which means that I have already distilled most of the information and the essence of the different parts of the different, say we'll be looking at the history, that's one part of it. But when we look at the Ayurvedic texts, we'll be studying about the individual bits that will help you at the end of 11 weeks to be able to put those protocols and practices into application and your own approach. So you can be rest assured that the content has been gleaned from the texts and from teachers who have conveyed it, but we will not be opening texts and studying the Sanskritam shlokas or the sutras that are there in the Samhitas. Okay. Any textbook referred? I have mentioned that. Thank you, Padmaji. That was very kind of you to say. Why isn't Ayurveda practice licensed in North America? I don't think I am equipped or knowledgeable enough to respond to that. How many classes are in the course? 11 weeks. So it's one session per week. So 11 weeks. Sudhaji asked about the syllabus for the 11 weeks. That will also be put up within the next few days, Sudhaji. So we can look at, you'll have 11-week syllabus out there for you. It goes through all of these different things we spoke about, including protocols, the doshas, the Mahabhutas, all of that. Is it all Friday evenings EST? Yes, all Friday evenings EST. Okay, books, stayed away from. Okay, if you stayed away from Facebook, Instagram, then I will add that maybe we will send out an email, or maybe in the next newsletter, or one of the next newsletters that you get from HUA, make sure you click them, make sure you read them, because somewhere in one of those newsletters, you'll find the recipe. Okay,
like
so you'll
Lube
probably
Energy,
get that
like
an email.
Happen. Thank you. Yes.
Okay, Ayurveda believe in taking COVID vaccination. Okay, I don't know what Ayurveda would believe, because Ayurveda is not an individual, but I think Ayurveda would equip you to make an ideal choice. I am not an Ayurvedic doctor, so it would be inappropriate for me to make a claim or make any kind of comment that would, alter someone's decision or choice when it comes to the COVID vaccination. I would be happy to, however, be able to share some information on what Ayurveda has to say about COVID. I think I don't have, I'm not really sure right now how I'll be able to share all of those with you, but we could, maybe Ankurji, if, how would we be able to have people have access to, or me share something with them? Is it on my social media? Is that possible?
What we could also do is just email everyone who registered for this webinar with a specific set of links and information that you want them to get, and we can send that out in the next couple of days.
Great. Yes.
Whatever you want to share with everyone, we'll just include that. Pragyaji helps coordinate that, so we'll just
yes. Oh yeah, that's brilliant. So thank you, Ankurji. That helps, and I think those who asked that, I think that answers your question. Sorry, I missed the name. Breathing techniques, no, KPG. Breathing techniques in Ayurveda, no. But perhaps if I take another yoga course, which integrates yoga and Ayurveda, then yes, I will. But if it comes as part of the conversation, as you can see, I wouldn't stop in sharing that. If it does come in as part of it, maybe I would. Okay. Empirical evidence, yes, there is to support the effectiveness of treatments. Lots of empirical evidence. I will be happy to share some of those links in that email that Ankurji just mentioned that we'll send out to you. Many ways in which we can figure out dosha without pulse evaluation. Many ways. Join the course and I'll tell you in session 2, 3, and 4. Okay. I'm trying to follow a sattvic diet. Will Ayurveda interfere? No. Ayurveda helps you come to a state of sattva, and Ayurveda helps you get into that state of a sattvic lifestyle. So it won't interfere. It will actually help and complement, promote it. Nadi Pariksha is a part of it, Jitendra ji. Yes. Thank you, Satya ji. I'm so glad that you found it impressive, the presentation. It's a pleasure. Thank you, Om ji. Thank you. I believe all our questions have been answered. That was a speed blitz round.
That was amazing, Lube Energy. Thank you so much. That was great. I'm glad that we were able to answer all of the questions. This has been a great webinar. I'm looking forward to this course in particular as we step into this Ayurvedic field with you leading the way for Hindu University of America. Please enroll in the course. I'm dropping the link in the chat one more time. Again, you have a short window for that $100 discount. Please enroll. We'll send you the follow-up email with the recording. Lube Energy, closing thoughts?
It's very difficult for someone who speaks so much like me, but closing thoughts. Everyone, Ayurveda is something that's available to all of us. It gives me lots of pleasure, lots of joy, and a lot of humility, actually, seeing all of you here at the webinar. HUA is a wonderful place for us to start our journey in exploring this. I'm very grateful that they have considered me as faculty to have this delivered to you. Closing thoughts as an end. Stay well, smile, and I send a lot of love and joy, feelings and sentiments of health, well-being to you, your family, your loved ones, to all of us here on the webinar and beyond. I look forward to seeing all of you on the 16th of April. And this is going to be a brilliant, brilliant course. Thank you very much for the opportunity, and namaste. Hari Om.